to just take a deep breath and as this goes live, so feel free to join me if it feels good to you. Take a long deep breath in and let it out. It has been a really long day in a really good way. And oh, hello people. Hi. Okay. Hello Gracie. Hey Lauren. Hey guys. So I had expressed my desire. Hey Amy. So I had expressed my desire to start logging on earlier. That didn't happen today. So that's okay. It's late, and so I'm sitting on the couch with a cup of tea. This is moringa, which is an adaptogenic tea, which means, like the name sounds, it adapts to your body's needs. So if you need more energy, it'll give you more energy. If you need more relaxation, it will give you that. Like adaptogens, like can feel into your body for what you need. So right now I can use a little more energy, but not enough to keep me awake later. So, but really I'm drinking this tea because there's no caffeine and it's very comforting. And I'm looking to kind of come back to myself after a really busy day. And so I'm honored and happy to be here tonight. Every time I do this, I remind myself how I have stood in my commitment to the guidance that I received through my intuitive guidance. It was a clairaudient message that I received to go on social media for 30 days. So do 30 lives for 30 days. And today is day 8. So thanks for logging in with me. And as I was taking care of a few things, they say a lot of times do the things that you don't want to do first, like get them out of the way. It's a good way of time management. So I was doing the dishes and just thinking about, what would be highest and best for me to share tonight. And so I had a couple of things come through. Hey Corey, hey girl. And so I had a couple of things come through. And so let's see if I can allow it to come through me now in an orderly fashion that will make sense to the outside world. So today, as you know, I'm dog sitting for a very adorable dog. And if you follow my stories, you'll see that she was struggling today. And so there's like the microcosm of the story, and then there's the macrocosm of the story. So I'll start with the context so you understand. So she is a small dog, smallish, and she, I think she was having some anxiety and also a skin flare-up. So she was itching incessantly, this poor girl, all night and all day. And so I had already discussed with the owner before she left about remedy, what they use. And so she uses homeopathic remedies, which is when I had my 2 dogs, which is why I dog sit, because my 2 dogs are now my fur angels. What do you call them? My spirit babies? They're not my spirit fur babies. And so I that's how I learned about homeopathics. Hey, Ileana. That's how I learned about homeopathics, was when I had my dogs, and one of them had very severe skin issues. I'll spare you the whole story tonight, but because it's a side story, but and they both suffered from anxiety. And so I had a beautiful, powerful journey learning about homeopathics through having my dogs, and now it helps me with when I sit for animals. So anyway, so I was in communications with the owner, and so I did some of my own remedies that I thought would be good, and then I asked the owner for permission to do Reiki on her dog. So I was trained that you should always ask permission to do Reiki. I 99% of the time in my class, I always ask permission. Every once in a while, I think I forget, but basically, I like to ask permission. And so, but what was happening is that she was having anxiety and a little depression, and then she was like hiding under furniture, and then she was putting herself in the corner in the bathroom, and then I was trying to give her love, of course, with honoring her boundaries. But at some point, like if I got close, she'd growl at me. And of course, then I have to tell her that that's not okay. You're not going to growl at me, and you're not going to bite me. So we went through this whole journey today, and I got permission from the mommy to give her Reiki. So with animals, we always give a smaller amount of Reiki. Those of you that are Reiki practitioners, you already know that. And so I gave her a few sessions throughout the day today, of mini Reiki sessions. And when I did it at first, she was looking at me like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she was like stunned. And then she'd like look around. Then she was like licking it in the air. And she was like kind of holding her head up, but laying down. And then I was talking to her, and actually some light language was coming out. So I was speaking to her through light language, and then she put her head down finally, and she rested and surrendered, and it was beautiful. And we did that a few times today. And by the afternoon, Chickadee was running around playing catch, and we went for a walk, and she was hippity hoppity, and still itching, but not like half as much. So between the remedies and the energy work, she's on a great path. So why am I talking about that here, right? This is, there's something very important here, and it's, if you notice that some people, hey Erin, if you notice that let's bring it to ourselves. Do you ever notice in yourself, like, you're a good person, and of course people that are around me are typically highly intuitive, and we're doing great things in the world, and we're really trying. And so, but do you ever notice when you're scared or overwhelmed, or depressed or anxious, that your personality shifts, right? And so in certain situations, you might not act like your normal self, right? Even though you're a really good person. You're probably intuitive. You're probably, do a lot of personal development work, and you are paying attention to your energy. But even those of us that have been there, right? Me too. And so even those of us that are doing all of it, we also can be cranky and whatnot, and scared, but usually fear is at the base of it, right? So, I was thinking about, like, her mom was thanking me so much, and I'm like, of course, that's, why I'm here. But the thing is that I've noticed over the years, even when I wasn't animal sitting, that people will judge an animal if they're, like, not friendly. But what you get to think about, what we get to think about, is if we pull back and we think about what were their experiences. Like, that's what I found myself saying to her today. Like, of course I had a healthy boundary when she was growling at me. I'm like, you will not bite me, and you will not growl at me, because I love you, right? But that's different than placing a judgment on this animal, and we're gonna hang with me as I bring this into how this might apply to you. I wasn't judging her. I was holding space for her to be in a different behavior than what is her true nature, because she was obviously having a trigger. She was obviously, and her mom then filled me in that she had this whole journey with fleas, and it was very traumatic for her, and she was doing the same behavior, hiding in the bathroom, and it was a whole thing with them. And so her mom felt that this itching, since the rain here, there's been a lot of mosquitoes around this house. So we think that being in the grass and being outside and then swimming in the pool, if you saw any of my stories, she was really cute. And the pool is salt water, so we think that all of that exacerbated her skin, and so she's itching like crazy. And so, but this journey to her probably feels like the flea issue again, and it was very traumatic for her. So when I go to pet her, no, I love you, and she's like, because she's like, don't come near me. What are you gonna do to me? And of course, I see this as trauma, and I see this through the field of vision of energy. And so I know that she has the veil of trauma in front of her, and she can't see that I'm here to help her. So it's my job to hold a greater space for her. And yes, she's a dog, but it's the same thing with people, right? So this is the reason why I was guided to talk about it here. If you think about it, how many people have you seen? I'm just going to take a sip of my tea. How many people have you seen that are like what's that word? Conundrum? I have a pretty good hold on the English language, but I can't grasp that word. But like a Scrooge, right? Somebody who love the connection with energy with animals and people. Literally the same, exactly. Literally the same. And so, have you ever met somebody, like, so if somebody walked in and saw her or met her for the first time when she's growling at me and, hiding and not letting me touch her, they might at first sight judge the dog, right? If you see this out somewhere, hey, come on in, welcome, right? So somebody might judge, right? And so think about how many times we have judged other people because of their cranky mood. I know I've been judged if I was triggered and that veil of trauma was blinding my clear vision. Or I can probably, if I think hard enough, I am sure that I can think about times where I might have judged. Oh, I can think about a time now. I remember her name, which I will not share here. But years ago, after college, I took a break from graphic design and I worked in retail, and I was a desk manager. I was working at, if any of you remember Ann Taylor, and we had a regular customer that would come in. So a lot of times in retail, especially at the higher end stores, you have certain people that might come in every week to shop. It's like a part of their weekly routine. And sometimes you find people that come in and now back then, we didn't know anything about trauma. None of us did. And this woman would come in and just start so many shenanigans, whether it was returning like dirty stained clothes, or just snapping at people and just raising her voice in the room, in the store. And at the time, I hate to say it, but I was really young, but at the time we would kind of be like, oh, here's da-da-da, and, everybody watch out, and it was almost like we almost kind of laughed at it. Today, that would never happen in my world, because now what I know is that looking back, this woman was in pain, right? So a lot of times, the people that are the hardest to love are the ones that need it the most. It's a dichotomy, right? So as I gave this animal that I'm sitting so much extra love and extra space, eventually she came out from underneath the furniture. She came out from the corner of the bathroom, and she let me put the leash on her. We went for a walk, and then eventually we were playing catch in the house. Oh wait, we have some comments here. Curmudgeon, thank you. I could not grasp that word. I love this topic. I often feel anxiety and am standoffish for the most part because of the trauma I've been through. And people take it like I'm mad, mean, but it's coming from a place of sadness and grief. Exactly. I was actually thinking about this. how I want to join mama communities for support, but I don't know how I will be received. Oh, girl, I totally feel you. Let's just take a deep breath together. And just ground into that. I wanted to come into this because this is so important for two perspectives. One, the way we see ourselves and how we could show up in the world, even with that insecurity that Amy just mentioned, and also how we look at other people. I know that there was a time where I was really scared. I went for care for my back, and I was away for a month. I was living in a hotel, and I was in this intensive program, and something happened, and it seemed like that they were not taking good care of me. And I spoke very strongly. I thought I was sticking up for myself, but in hindsight, I realized that I could have handled it differently. And I realized that they also kind of stood back, and so the point here, right? The woman in the retail store, right? The one that was, I still remember her name this many years later because she left such an impact because some of her behavior was so outrageous. But the thing was, imagine what this woman has been through. Imagine what the dog that I'm sitting for has been through, that I want to reach to pet her and she's growling at me, right? And so imagine that. And like what Amy's saying, she was saying here that, it's because of the grief and trauma that she's been through that she said that she feels her anxiety makes her on the outside look like she's being standoffish, right? So it makes it look like maybe people will think that she doesn't care, and that's not really true. And so the invitation is, where can we add a little more compassion, even without evidence? Just knowing as a fellow human that each of us has something that we carry, right? So, hey, next adventure. Hey, welcome. And so, I just had another story come in and then I just lost it. But it'll come back if it's important. But the idea is how can we expand our awareness and not take things personally, and have that compassion, right? So like with this animal, this is my first time sitting for this dog, and as she was acting out, I could have reacted in a very different way. Instead of holding more love and more compassion, yet giving her space, right? So I'm very aware of healthy boundaries. I don't want to put my face in front of her when she's in that state, because when she's in that state and she has the veil in front of her of trauma, she could bite me. And she could still be a really sweet dog, but she just might not be seeing clearly, just the way humans could be the same. And so, where are we missing opportunities by judging people the wrong way? Where can we, and even back to yesterday, having these conscious conversations. And so, perhaps, asking somebody if they're okay, right? I thought a friend was ghosting me, and so I realized that it was activating an old wound of being abandoned without explanation, right? I have people in my life that just are not open to having conscious conversations, and it's very painful. And so instead of, in the past, I would have just let it go, deleted the conversation, or just moved on. And instead, because I'm in the practice of using my authentic voice and creating more conscious connections, more authentic relationships, I brought it to her attention, and I just said, hey, you were inviting me to have this conversation, and then it kind of looks like you're ghosting. Are you okay? And it turns out that, she just has a lot of kids, and there was a lot going on, and she sincerely apologized, and it was really nothing at all. Now, if I would have taken her exterior actions and looked at it through my old eyes of trauma, not my old eyes, but the veil of trauma, right? Through the veil of trauma, I could have looked at the same scenario and gotten really defensive and made her wrong, and then just kind of, I would have lost the opportunity of connection, because when we had the conversation, we got into this really deep, beautiful, connective conversation that was so expansive for both of us, and we both felt so seen and heard. And it wasn't only about trauma repair or trauma bonding, how it was also about celebrating each other, and the things that we've been doing, and how we've had breakthroughs in certain areas in our lives, because we hadn't seen each other in a long time. And so it was so beautiful to do this, to have these, open up this conversation, and then be able to move through it so quickly, where it was no big deal. Whereas if I would have just judged the outside, and I could have made it this whole thing, and then maybe I would have had to talk to somebody else about it and journaled about it, about being abandoned and being rejected, where it was nothing like that. I know that's a very minor example, but these are the things. And back to the animal, right? So when she was acting a certain way, I could have labeled her a bad dog, right? If I was a different person. But she's not a bad dog. She's actually an amazing dog, and very loving and very cuddly, up until, like, I would be cranky too if I had like 20 mosquito bites and, and trying to let it heal. So, right? I mean, we've all been there. I mean, I've had sunburns and stuff. So, so this, if you have animals, a lot of times they could reflect back to us these lessons that we can learn in our human experience. I've always relied on my animals to also reflect back to me that mirror effect that I've talked about in previous videos, whereas we are in a mirror type of universe, where if we have stuff going inside that we don't see, it will be reflected back to us in front of us. Yeah. So I lost my train of thought, but yeah. But this was a beautiful thing. So Amy, in answer to your question about reconnecting with the mama groups, what you can do is, do a couple of grounding exercises, and, maybe connect with one or two people in the group at first. And when you feel like there's a trusted person, you could just be more expressive. Like, you can say, hey, I'm just feeling really tired today. I might look, standoffish, but I'm not, that kind of thing, and just kind of explain where you are. I remember seeing an interview with Ben Affleck. It was actually very funny, and he was saying, like, they were commenting at one of the award shows that when he was sitting with J-Lo, his wife, that he looked like he was really unhappy. And then, of course, the paparazzi, they write up stories, these magazines, and run with it. So when he talked about it in an interview, he's like, listen, my resting face looks like I'm pissed off. He goes, look. And he was like, however his resting face was. And it looked like he was angry. But he's like, I'm just resting. That's just my face. Right? So he made it really funny. And so, it just made me think of, and this is another good example. Okay, so you've seen, if you've been watching my videos, I know that they're long, so you might not have watched all of them or all the way through, and that's totally fine. But I used to work in corporate for the first part of my career for a long time, and I was a graphic designer, and then a senior graphic designer. So this was the time where I was, and I was an art director. And then, anyway, I went to this large company, and we were in cubicles. And I remember there was a woman that was working there that was more senior than me, but nobody wanted to work with her on a project because she was cranky pants, and she would make people really, really upset, like going to the manager upset kind of thing. And so I didn't pay her much mind. I just was always the type that, let me just do what I need to do. I focus on my business. I don't want to focus on other people's business, and please don't involve me in gossip, was my deal. But I had to interact with her on some sort of project. And I remember she became nasty about something. And I was mad, and at the time I hadn't really done much somatic work, so I had difficulty moving through my body. And then I also was in the corporate world where it was very difficult for me to figure out how to express without being inappropriate. So I would lean towards holding it in rather than saying too much. And I remember I was like getting really, really mad, and my eyes filled with tears, but not crying tears. It was like rage tears. Like I just wanted to tell her things that I can't say here on Instagram. So anyway, fast forward to later, I got over it and did, back then I was practicing a lot of yoga and teaching on the weekends. And so I processed it through. I always had a journaling practice too. Anyway, one day, and I always used to do my work, just for context, I always do my work, hey girl, hey Peaceful Body Spa. So I always used to do work with earbuds in my ears, because as a highly sensitive person, I didn't want, the fluorescent lights bothered me and noises around me. So I always had earbuds on, and usually it was with music or it was with high vibe podcasts. Back then, it was Hay House Radio. Those of you that know Hay House, Louise Hay, she's like the queen. Look her up if you don't know who she is. And they published a lot of the best books ever. And before podcasts were popular, we had Hay House Radio, where Wayne Dyer had a show every week, and Dr. Christiane Northrup had a show every week. Gabby Bernstein I think she started having a show every week a little later on, and some other really great people, Colette Baron-Reid. Anyway, so I would just listen to these high vibe things as I was designing, because that's the kind of work that you can listen. And one day, I took my earbuds out for some reason. I was taking a break or whatever, and I noticed that I can hear that woman in her cubicle. She was talking, and I wasn't eavesdropping, but it kind of like took my attention somehow. And I realized that she was talking to herself. And then this is what opened my eyes for the very first time about don't judge. Like, whatever you feel like judging, pause on the judgment, because you don't know. So what I heard her saying to herself were the meanest things to herself. She was calling herself stupid. She was calling, I don't know if I remember all the words, but it was like, I'm so stupid, and how could I do that? And I knew that I can feel in my bones that she was repeating whatever was said to her when she was a child. So if you don't do trauma work, if you don't do inner child work, it stays with you and repeats over and over within yourself, and perhaps with other people. Hey, Lori. and it might reflect back to you through other people. So it also might be reflecting in yourself. So what I realized in that moment was, no, of course she's so cruel to people, because I only got to hear a snippet of what she was saying to herself. But imagine what she was saying to herself maybe all day, every day, or at least a lot of times, because it was coming out of her mouth so easily. It was so painful. Like, at that point, I was able to feel compassion for her and understanding. And then it gave me compassion for myself too, for all the times that I too had spoken to myself in a way that I should never have, that I might have repeated the way I was spoken to as a kid. And it was like, whew. And that was before I was coaching, obviously, but this was like the awarenesses were so clear. So after that, every time I was around her, I looked at her with new eyes, with like love was shining out of my eyes towards her, even if she wasn't nice. I was literally able to let it roll off my back, because I just knew that she was in so much pain. Like, it was like God gave me that moment, and now I'm sharing it with you, so maybe you don't have to experience that moment, and you can remember this story. Hey, Heather. And so you can remember this story and think about, wow, like, if, like, like going to Publix and you're asking like, where's the tuna? And they're like, and mean to you. And you could think, wow, they must have had a really rough morning, right? And these are the little examples, and we could build upon them. And this kind of tags onto yesterday's video about building our resilience for being able to hold our sacred space within our bodies, within our chakras, under any circumstances. Wait, I noticed that there was a comment, so let me just see if I missed it. You hit the nail on the head. The hardest people to love are the people that need the most love. Exactly. Thank you so much for the suggestions on grounding before I attend a community event. Yes, ground every time, only every time that you do anything. I ground myself. I set an intention before I go into Publix. Let this be quick, easy, friendly, and efficient, right? So, or maybe I'll say, and get me a good deal if I want to see if I can get a 2-for-1, right? So we can set intentions, but grounding down into the earth is so important. And oh wait, here's another comment. If we are willing to lean into the invitation to open up in new ways, and we can connect even deeper and rewrite our own story instead of repeating the same experiences over and over again. Yes, whoo, Erin. Exactly. Mind-blowing is what I meant by that. Right, because we can't change our story, right? We can't, like, whatever's happened has happened, and nothing's going to ever unhappen it. You can't unsee things, you can't unhear things. And like I think it was yesterday's video or the day before where I was talking about acceptance, right? Like, or maybe it was a post I wrote, but whatever. If we accept everything as it is, we can then deal with, okay, what's next? And even if that means, okay, what's next? Like, how can I shift my perception? Because I can't change that happened, right? I can't change that a particular family member doesn't want to have a conscious conversation with me. I can't change it. I used to try to change it. I used to try to change things like that. But if I can send them unconditional love, but first, it has to start here. Because otherwise, if I'm just sending out love and light as my response, then we all know that I'm spiritually bypassing. Because deep down inside, there's a part that's, right, we talked about parts yesterday. There's the part of me, I'll talk about myself in that case scenario, where that part of me might still feel those old feelings of like, hey, don't leave me, don't abandon me, oh, don't hurt me, I don't want to feel betrayed, right? And those are old stories. And yeah, when we were kids, if you were in situations that were unfair, then yeah, you were a victim because you were a child. You weren't able to earn money. You weren't able to drive a car. You didn't have an education yet. But as adults, we might experience some of those same feelings. Like a lot of time, most of us are walking around adult children until we bring awareness to these parts and bring them back to ourselves and take them in, and we hold them like a little baby and we integrate them back into our body so that we become whole, so that when that old familiar feeling comes in, we can say, yeah, it feels that way, but we're not there anymore, and I've got you. And so I guess in that way we are rewriting our own story. I mean, then there's a whole other video I can do about re-scripting, where you actually can, I can touch on it real quick, but you can re-script, right? So a part of healing for me and for some of my clients has been where I've taken them through a re-scripting process, which means that you can, like, let's give an example. Maybe you were 4 years old and your mom was like 45 minutes late, which to a 4-year-old could feel like you were left for a year, and it was traumatizing, right? So we can go back to that moment and be in that observing part. We don't want to be in the body and re-experience the trauma, but we can go back and look at it and as the observer, like watching the film of what happened. And then we could create a different ending. Like we could picture, like, maybe somebody came, or maybe dad came instead of mom, and then we all met for ice cream, and you could get creative and you could re-script. But what's also important is to re-script our interpretations of what happened. And I won't go into a lot of detail, but I wrote a post yesterday, and what I wrote in it was about how I've come to gratitude, appreciation, trust, and faith for a certain family member situation that, used to feel like really horrific. Because I've realized the bigger picture, right? This person's no longer in my life, and so, obviously there was a process of grief. But what I realized, if this person was in my life, there would have been a lot of drama year after year based on my past experiences there. So I was like, oh, God is giving me that gift of spaciousness, even though it's not the way I think it should be, right? So, but that was a process of feeling the feelings, feeling the grief, going through the stages, and then coming to the other side of it, where, yeah, of course, sometimes there's still sadness, but I can hold that sadness, and I could hold myself and give myself the needs that I didn't have met, and also trust that this is exactly the way it's supposed to be, and I have faith in that, and it brings me comfort. And then, of course, pairing that up with somatic work to make sure that I'm not just spiritually bypassing and just like making, because I don't want to feel it, that I make it all better in my head. Instead, I also make sure that it, from the neck down, that my body starts to feel better. And if it doesn't feel better, to be with it, right? We can't rush. Sometimes feelings get to be felt, and typically if you go into the feeling for 60 to 90 seconds, you will clear the whole thing. But when it's tied in with a story, it needs a little more time to get untangled. Let me just see if I missed any other comments. I cry when I'm angry too. Yeah, some people cry when they're angry. I was just enraged that day. But what a gift that was. Yes, I feel like it's about rewriting our own internal stories, limiting beliefs. There you go. Exactly. Through the tools, and it's only possible when we accept what our story has been in the past. Exactly. Yeah, and we suffer when we don't accept the past. Like, there's a saying in my family, it should have never happened, or you shouldn't know from it. I don't know if that's just a Jewish thing or if that's just my family, but I don't really believe in that. You shouldn't know from it. It's like almost saying, like, you can't handle it. Like, the kids shouldn't know from it. Well, why not? Right? We get to know from it, and it's not that it shouldn't have happened, because it happened. So if it happened, then I know with certain things it's very hard to wrap the brain around that it should have happened. So maybe should is a little bit tough of a word, but we can't unhappen things. We can't go back and make it unhappen. And when we keep telling ourselves, when we keep going back, that's what rumination is. Our brains want to keep going back, thinking about it again, to close the loop and like make a resolution. And certain things just don't have a resolution, or at least not yet. But when we go into the full acceptance, and the full acceptance, in my experience, has been one of the most difficult things to do, because that means feeling all of it. As I said in previous videos, that part of my personal trauma response that I developed as a kid was dissociation, like freeze. So like I would just kind of like be like, oh, I'm going to meditate. Well, I never said meditate, but I used to say I'm going into a staring trance. And then I would just sit there and be like, and I would just go places, or I would close my eyes and go be in the upper chakras. And I am sure that that's the reason that I didn't walk out of my household with a drug problem, an alcohol problem, a sex problem, a shopping problem. I didn't do those things, probably because part of it. But eventually that caught up with me, because then when I needed to feel things all the way, my body knew, like, boop, let's go fly in the ethers, where, it's much more fun up there. And so, which is great, and it's not, right? It's because we are a spiritual being having a human experience. If you have ever studied Wayne Dyer, you've heard him say that a million times, right? So we get to have the human experience, and we can't complete these trauma loops without feeling it all the way. So my personal path, and I know a lot of my clients have been the same way, where, like, I was just talking to one of my clients, I guess a week and a half ago, and she was like, I just, I'm up here, I'm thinking about it. It's really hard for me to feel in my body. And I just recorded a longer meditation. My clients get pre-recorded meditations from me, and I usually keep them around 8 to 10 minutes, give or take. But this one was a much longer guided meditation to go through the body and feel into the body sensations, because I know in my own experience and the feedback that I've been getting from my clients is that it can be so challenging that we start to leave, right? Or think instead of feeling into our bodies. So we want to get patient. Yeah, I know I'm going off on tangents here, but yeah, but coming back to the body can also, to tie it into the original thing that I was talking about, coming back into our bodies when somebody in front of you is acting in a way that seems really aggressive, where we might get defensive, we might, take it personally, we might judge. But that's all out here, right? That's me seeing you, seeing how you're acting towards me. But my piece comes from like a vertical energy, like from above and from below. So if I can receive light from above and connect to the earth below, bring the earth light in, right? If you've been to my Wednesday night class, that's pretty much how I lead most of my meditations, because that's all I see is, like, how can I ground and how can I connect? And then we could expand out in front of us. And so then we can shift our perception and maybe give a space for somebody that might be in poor behavior, just like we've done before, right? I can't imagine that any of you watching, or any of you that will watch this later in the replay, that you've never ever had poor behavior. I know that I have, and I'm not proud of it, but I am a human being, and that's what happens. And so if the people around me could be more loving, or more open to, like, wow, she might be going through something really hard, instead of what's wrong with her, or step away and judge her, or the way we did that with the lady at retail where we laughed at her. And I'm so sorry about that, because I could only imagine the pain that she was in, and what would have happened if I had an education at the time around trauma, and I could have told my coworkers to, hey, like, let's, send her love energetically, because she's probably in a lot of pain, and imagine how her energy might have shifted. And I'm not just talking woo-woo. People can feel your intentions towards them. I've seen people interviewed who were in a coma, and people prayed for them, and they came back from a coma, they healed, and said, hey, I felt the prayers. Like the other day, Erin, who's in here now, oh, thank you, honey. Erin called out for help from her community to pray for a family friend. And of course, I was like, I had a really busy day, but I'll jump in. I jumped in at like somebody else's house. And because I know the importance of it, because I know that even if I don't even need to know the woman's story, and the woman never has to meet me, I never have to meet her. But if I'm sending her that energy, she's going to feel it. And I will bring this too, because it's just coming in. So I do teach my clients something that I call soul conversations. Okay, so soul conversations especially with the people that are difficult. So we can even do this without having a real conversation in the 3D, but you can sit with somebody in a sacred place in your mind and talk with them. Or before you are about to have a conversation with them. Let's say you have a partner, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you have to have one of these conscious, difficult conversations. You can sit with them at the soul level through your heart, and you can either talk with them, or you can just say, hey, you know, I really just want to come to this with love. Please hear me with love. And this, I'm only coming to this with love, or whatever. You can send these prayers, you can send intentions, you can send energy out to people, and notice how they might shift. So you could experiment even at Publix, like just kind of send love to somebody and see if they respond to you. But I think there's another comment. Thank you for doing these. I'm in, Taiwan. Oh, cool. Where it's Tuesday morning. What a beautiful way to start off the day. That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that next adventure. That's awesome. And Lauren said, I think it's a Jewish thing too, and it is my family as well. Yeah, but you shouldn't know from it. It used to be cute, but when you think about it, it's not empowering. And then Amy is saying, full acceptance is feeling all of it. I needed to hear that. Yeah, I hear you, honey. Take your time with it. I'm spending too much time in suffering, ruminating on past things I can't change. I've been there, and I see you. Sometimes the best thing to do, maybe that's why you are getting that intuitive nudge to meet with the moms, because sometimes the best thing to do when we feel like we're ruminating so much and we've processed a lot, sometimes the best thing to do is pivot, but with people that you feel good about being around. So yeah, that is, yeah. And you can even do acceptance journaling, acceptance ritual. Hey there. Hi. Okay, thanks, honey. Thanks for being there. Hey, hi, everyone. Awesome. So, let me see. I was just answering comments. Now let me just see where I was at. Yeah, so basically, what prompted all of this was I'm sitting for this adorable animal who was having a really difficult situation, and she's looking at me now, and she was growling at me and getting a little, and you know, it just reminded me of how people do the same thing, and that how we can, well, there's two things. We can bring more love to those people, but what I find to be even more effective is to first see where it's in me, where I can make sure that I'm in a love frequency. Like what Amy was saying before going to meet up with the moms, she can ground, and we can connect in our hearts first, and especially to remember the times where I too acted that way, and then we can look at that person and send them love, just like that person in the other cubicle in my office, in that office that I used to work at. And if you've just signing on didn't hear it, you'll get to see it in the replay. But the rest of the time I worked there, I looked at her differently, and it made me remember, for the most part, even on the road, I try to remember, because on the road, to me, it's a little harder, because I feel like they're putting me in danger. If somebody's cutting me off or not letting me over when I need to get over, they speed up just for the time when I need to move over, and I do get upset. But then I try to remember, like, people like that are in pain. People like that are in pain, because there are plenty of other people that like just let you in or hold open the door, and you know that they've been either taking care of themselves or they're just wanting to put love and goodness out into the world, and we get to do that too. So yeah, so that's the moral of the story today, that just seeing how, and what ended up happening with this animal companion that I'm sitting for, as she, as I gave her space, as I gave her love, no matter what she was doing, eventually she was like, oh, wait, I can trust this person. And then she like came out from underneath the furniture, or at one point she was hiding in the bathroom, And she came out, and then I had the leash, which she normally shies away from, and then she let me put it on, and we went for a walk. And then she was walking, and and then we were playing catch, and she was like a whole different, she was back to herself. And I just wonder how we can do that more in the world. I know even with my coaching clients, I have had client sessions, and I'll wrap it up on this, because this reminds me of the same concept. I've had people with different ways that they experience trauma. And so I've had several people that have a similar experience to me where they shut down, right? So they start to get like the glaze over, and I have ways of holding space for them and to bring them back, right? Because you can see that something activated them to make them shut down. And I've also had, hey Wendy, and I've also had people that maybe come off like a little bit aggressive, because one thing I'm really good at is I can laser in on old wounds or old traumas to help integrate it back into your life so you can be free. And I do it in a way that's kind and loving and conscious and also direct. So you've got to be willing to do the work. And so but I've been able to hold space for both, right? Because if somebody's coming at me, and if I wasn't trained to see what that really was, I could feel threatened, and I could feel like defensive, like I'm coaching you or something like that. I don't know. But instead, I know that that's a call for deeper love. Just like the woman, that client that we had at Ann Taylor, just like that woman, there goes my hair. And that's just like that woman in that old job that I used to have, right? So we can see, or just like the dog today. So like when somebody's acting like I still can't say the word, Erin's gone, but it was curmudgeon. I have got to learn that word today. Anyway, when somebody's acting like that, we don't have to love them right away, because if you're getting triggered, those are real feelings, right? So I am not in any way, let me just clarify, I'm not in any way saying squash your feelings when you're annoyed or offended, but what I am saying is to check yourself, is to process it between you and yourself, with you and God, with you and your higher self, and process it. What is it touching for you from your past? Where have you first felt that way? And then you can come back to the person. Just like the example I gave yesterday, where I had a beautiful conscious conversation with a friend that deepened our friendship and our intimacy, right? And as I said yesterday, intimacy is not just for lovers. Intimacy is for family members, for friendships, even for coworkers. And so we get to really hold that space. Oh yeah, thank you. Curmudgeon. I don't know why I do that. For years I used to say espresso, and there's no X in espresso. So I do find the language to be very powerful, and I like to use it properly, so thank you. Right, intimacy is into me, I see, or you see. And so as we get to say these things and share these things, and if I talked more about that yesterday, so I'm not going to repeat it, but yeah, so that's really it. And so I invite you, I had a coach, Emily Utter, that always used to say the thing. I think she ended up creating a whole new program, Say the Thing, and that always stuck with me. And there was a long time that I couldn't say the thing. And with certain people, it's still difficult to say the thing. But, we can, once we check in with ourselves and we get confident inside our body and with God, we can say the thing, and it gets easier, and it gets easier, and it gets easier, which is really super nice. And the last part would be, I keep saying it's the last part, but things keep coming in. So when somebody is acting a certain way and you want to say the thing, there are times when you first check in with yourself, your highest self, you ground, clear, do the somatic work and all the things that I have mentioned already, sometimes it's no longer needed. If it's somebody that you're close with and it wasn't that big of a deal, some things get to ride. And then other things you get to say. So I feel that it takes practice. But I guess the main theme tonight is to expand your ability to see more deeply into what people are showing on the outside, because you really, really just don't know. And so, hi there. And you just don't know. You just don't know. So, and how wonderful that we as conscious beings, that we get to sprinkle love like little fairy dust, and we don't even have to actually say much. We could just sprinkle the love just by holding space, letting people be who they are, or complimenting them. I've seen people get really angry online, and then maybe just separately I'll give them a compliment, only because I can see how much pain they're in, and then I look to find something that's a genuine, real, I'm not making it up, and their whole body softens. And I know that people have held the door open for me when on days where I was like, everything was going wrong. I stubbed my toe, I ran late, my skirt got caught in the door of my car, and then somebody holds the door open for me, which they might think is no big deal, and it shifted my whole day. So anyway, as you let this integrate and you think about it, feel free to DM me of your experiences of this, or when somebody saw through your curmudgeon self, and or have you seen through somebody else's, and how has this changed your experience? I would love to hear. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for sharing your feedback. And Amy, I can't wait to hear after you step into the moms group how that works out for you. And just sending so much love and gratitude. Thanks for sharing with me and for letting me hold this space this 30 days of 30 lives, and just kind of letting God speak through me. So thanks, everyone. Sending so much love. Thank you. So much gratitude.